Hello everyone, my name is Justin Emery, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the Humane Tech movement. I'll start with a little about myself. I've been a professional software developer since 2007. I started out at a video games company, but after a number of years, I eventually lost interest in that industry. In 2017, I took some time out to reflect on my career and my life, and amongst other things, I attended a mindfulness and meditation retreat in Plum Village in the French countryside. This is a monastic center with practicing monks and nuns from a Buddhist tradition in Vietnam. During that week, I was offline, I meditated, I ate healthy food, and took walks in the forest. It was a wonderful experience. Time seemed to slow down, and I wanted to apply that to my life outside of the monastery. So after the retreat, I tried to continue my meditation and mindfulness practice and had some success, but I found that I really struggled when I was around technology. So whenever my smartphone or my laptop was nearby, I was no longer really in the present moment. I was often distracted. There was something about the way that technology is designed that made it harder to stay present. So I wanted to figure out why this is, what I can do for myself and others to be less distracted by technology and to have technology support practice of mindfulness instead of stopping me from living in that way. 1 year after the retreat, I founded Mindful.technology, which is a website which covers digital well-being habits, meditation apps, and humane tech. Humane tech was a term that I heard about a little after I launched the website, and I thought that this is really what I'm talking about. This is, I didn't have words for the topic that I was concerned about, but this phrase, humane tech, really stood out as something which explained what I was interested in. At the same time, I became a freelance consultant. I started working for startups, small businesses, and non-profits. When I could, I worked on Wellbeing or humane tech software solutions. And the most significant project of this kind is the Plum Village app, which is actually the app that is related to the meditation center that I have been to retreat at. This is a donation-based app, so it feels less commercial than some of the other alternatives. It's developed by a small team, but it has quite a lot of success. I think it's now been downloaded about 500,000 times. So moving on to the topic of today's talk. This will be an introduction to humane technology. We'll look at what is humane technology and what problems it's looking to solve. We'll look at the origins of the humane tech movement, the activities of the Center for Humane Technology, and we'll review the community of humane tech enthusiasts and some software alternatives and startups in the humane tech space. So humane technology has emerged as a term to describe how tech products or services can be designed to respect the user's time and attention. In other words, treating users as a boss rather than the product. It was popularized by the Center for Humane Technology, which is a non-profit in the United States. But it can also be described as a community and a movement. Humane technologists are those who, whether they use this term or another, are interested in how they can design tech products to fulfill a real user need without unintended negative consequences for individuals and society. The Center for Humane Technology says that their mission is to drive a comprehensive shift towards humane technology that supports our well-being, democracy, and shared information environment. I have a slightly simpler definition, which is that humane technology is an ethical alternative to the attention economy. It respects your time, attention, and personal data. So what is the attention economy? Well, we're all familiar with this. It's the way that most online platforms work today. So most of the social media networks like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, many news organizations, they all offer their products and services for free. However, there are hidden costs to our time and attention when we use them. There is a saying that if you're not paying, you're not a customer, you're the product being sold. And of course, advertisers are the real customer on these platforms. The platforms aim to increase engagement to show more adverts. So they want their users to use the platform as much as possible so that they can show as many adverts as possible. This isn't a new business model. It existed for other forms of media such as TV, radio, and print. So what's the problem? Well, with the latest generation of technology, social media networks and smartphones, the ads are targeted based on a profile of the user. So over time, the platforms are learning more about the user's age, gender, location, hobbies, interests, religion, political views, etc. The algorithms can actually learn more about us than our friends or family know. So for example, if you have a medical condition and you search to learn about that medical condition, then whichever platforms you're using will have a record of that, and that can then become part of your profile. And this may be a condition that it's very private to you, that you haven't told your friends about. So the result of having this profile of users is that both the content and the adverts are far more enticing compared with traditional advertising. Adverts aren't the only concern, so the way content is recommended and shared can be problematic. For example, on YouTube, the majority of content that people watch is not the content that they intended to watch initially, but rather the recommendations, which tend to be so appealing because they have a full history of what you've watched before. Even if you use an ad blocker, therefore, you can still be affected by the mechanisms that these platforms use. You can still find that you go on intending to check something for 5 minutes, but you've been there for 1 hour or more. So now I want to discuss the harms of the attention economy. This might be obvious to you if, like me, you spent too long on a video sharing platform or a social media platform. But there are other harms which may not be so obvious to you. The Center of Humane Technology has created a ledger of harms available at ledger.humanetech.com with around 100 pieces of evidence from scientific and other sources. And broadly speaking, these can be categorized as either individual or collective harms. I'm going to cover a few highlights. So the individual harms include increased anxiety. This is particularly prevalent in Gen Z, the generation that have grown up with smartphones and social media. Usage of social media also decreases attention spans, decreases our cognitive abilities, and decreases our productivity. We lose, on average, about 1 hour a day, which adds up to 5 full weeks per year, to digital distraction. Tech can also damage our relationships. If there is a phone present, this has been shown to reduce our empathy, our trust, and our sense of closeness with others. Now, the less obvious harms may be the collective harms. Online platforms such as social media now have unprecedented influence over human behavior. They've been described as behavioral modification empires for rent. This means that rich organizations can modify the behavior of millions of people through placing targeted advertisements. Now, the modification of people's behavior may be quite small, but at a large scale, this can be significant. For example, 1% can often be enough to swing an election. Another collective concern is polarization. So it's been shown that moral outrage engages people more than the nuanced middle ground. So there's a tendency for us to engage more with content that's on the extremes. And we're recommended content by algorithms that tends to be more extreme than the content we're currently viewing. So it's constantly pushing us in the direction of extreme views. One of the worst examples of the attention economy comes from Myanmar. Since 2017, there has been a genocide of a minority people called the Rohingya people. And this has been linked by some to hate speech, which has spread through Facebook. So since 2017, around 25,000 people were killed, and there were over 700,000 refugees. And recently a lawsuit was launched suing Facebook by some of those refugees for their role in that genocide. So these are some of the problems that Humane Tech is looking to solve. Let's look at a history of the Humane Tech movement. In the late 20th century, the internet emerged. In 1999, the World Wide Web was created, which gave us web pages and links. In 1996, Google was created. This was followed by Facebook and Twitter in the early 2000s. In 2007, the iPhone was launched, and the following year, Android was launched. So this gave us the environment that we have today: smartphones and social media. Over the last 10 years or so, doubts have begun to emerge about this technological environment. In 2010, Nicholas Carr's book, The Shallows, was published. This was perhaps the first book to raise concerns about how the internet is changing our brains and our behavior, shortening attention spans and making extended periods of focus rarer. In 2011, there was what's known as the Arab Spring. These were revolutions in the Middle East. There was a story at the time about how this was driven by tech. So the fact that many of the citizens now had smartphones, could record video, and could share them on social media. This was the narrative that was in the Western media anyway, that explained how so many revolutions occurred in such a short time throughout the Middle Eastern region. At the time, it was regarded as a positive use of this technology because dictators that in some cases had been in place for decades were overthrown. But since that time, the long-term impact has been more quite chaotic. So there have been extended civil wars in Syria and Libya, and there's been a refugee crisis from that region into Europe. And so the long-term legacy of the Arab Spring is less clear in terms of whether it's been a good thing or not. In 2013, Edward Snowden, a whistleblower, revealed that the US government and others were involved in mass surveillance of communications data from normal citizens. This raised concerns about privacy online. Since that time, many tech firms have taken privacy more seriously. They've introduced encryption and other features. Also in 2013, Tristan Harris, a Google product manager, raised concerns internally using a slide deck called A Call to Minimize Distraction and Respect Users' Attention. This was well received at Google, and he was given the new position of design ethicist. He also founded Time Well Spent, a non-profit, which aimed to bring change across the tech industry. In 2016, Harris left Google to focus full-time on Time Well Spent. And around that time, there were a lot of articles published in newspapers and magazines about these issues, that tech platforms were distracting us and were taking away from our time and away from the things that are important to us. So tech companies did take some action. In 2018, Google launched the digital Wellbeing app, and Apple launched the screen time features. Both of these help users to monitor and limit their device usage. Now in 2018, Time Well Spent was reformed as Center for Humane Technology. This reflected a shift in the concerns of Tristan Harris and others who were involved. They realized that this was not just an individual problem, but it was a societal problem. The language they were using had changed. The concerns about hijacking users' attention began to be placed into a wider context, which went beyond the impact of individuals. They continued to talk about these individual concerns, but they also described how this process of human downgrading was beginning to impact our society. It wasn't just an issue of productivity and well-being, but they were showing how through tech, the rich and powerful could influence millions of people and our democracy could deteriorate. They are particularly interested in social media platforms. They have a huge amount of influence due to their scale. Now I'm going to describe some of the activities of the Center for Humane Tech. Tristan Harris has been involved in testifying at US Senate hearings. I believe he's done that 3 times now, in 2019, 2020, and 2021. So the aim there is to inform policymakers. The Center for Humane Technology would like to see a regulatory environment that incentivizes tech companies to reduce business externalities. Externalities are the costs paid by society rather than the companies providing the services. So environmental externalities are an example which is commonly understood. For example, most of us are aware that the release of carbon by our industries is contributing to climate change. The big tech externalities are a little harder to describe, but we've talked about some of those. You can see the ledger of harms that I introduced earlier. Another activity is campaigning for change in big tech platforms. A recent campaign launched by the Center for Humane Technology is the One Click Safer campaign, which aims to persuade Facebook to introduce friction to sharing. It's based on the idea that the things which are shared most frequently are the most extreme. They're more likely to contain nudity, violence, hate speech, or misinformation. So by introducing friction, or making it a little harder to share, then the spread of this harmful content is reduced. It's a feature which would protect free speech because it would still be possible to share, but it would just be a little more difficult to do so. Another activity of the Center for Humane Technology is education. They are educating by providing resources for parents, educators, and individuals. They provide some toolkits. The Take Control toolkit offers steps that individuals can take to protect themselves from tech platforms. The Youth Toolkit is aimed at teenagers and young people, and they provide suggestions for educators to apply that toolkit in the classroom. They also have a podcast, Your Undivided Attention, which features interviews with experts on reimagining technology to be more humane. Finally, the Center for Humane Technology are involved in guiding technologists. They provide principles for building humane tech. They've also launched a course called The Foundations of Humane Technology. This is a free 8-part course for product development teams, and it's supported by online discussion groups. Humane Tech is not only the Center for Humane Technology, but it's also a wider movement. In 2018 and 19, there were meetups held around the world in the US and European cities. These were started by volunteer enthusiasts in a decentralized manner. They weren't organized by a Center for Humane Tech. An example is Humane Tech London. This is one that I attended myself. They had 6 events with 3 speakers per event from a diverse range of disciplines, including startup founders, digital wellbeing consultants, designers, researchers, authors, and policymakers. Unfortunately, these meetups have stopped in most places due to the pandemic. Another example of Humane Tech as a movement is the Humane Tech community. This was founded with the support of Center for Humane Technology, but it is now run independently by volunteers. It mainly consists of a forum with around 2,000 members. I recently volunteered there to be part of the team myself. They also maintain the Humane Tech Awesome list, which is a list of perhaps hundreds of open source humane tech projects. This includes privacy tools, ad blockers, mindfulness apps, community software such as alternative social media, and much more. It's available at community.humanetech.com. There are many established alternative software solutions with an ethical focus, for example, with enhanced privacy. These kinds of services have been gaining popularity in the years following the Edward Snowden revelations. One such example is Proton Mail, which is a fully encrypted email provider without advertisements, based in Switzerland. Another one is DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine which does not track users. There are many others. A couple of websites I recommend for finding alternatives are ethical.net and switching.software. There are also newer software projects which have been inspired directly by the humane tech movement. These are newer, they are emerging. My hope is that in a few years some of these will become quite popular products, like some of the privacy-focused products have already become. I want to briefly cover a couple of examples of startups which have launched products in the humane tech space. Siempo was described by the CEO as the first humane startup. They created a distraction-free home screen for Android. So instead of seeing many colorful icons when you open your phone, you'd see grayscale, minimalist icons. And this is a lot less distracting, so that when you open your phone, you are more likely to end up going to do the task that you intended to, rather than perhaps seeing a badge, some notifications, which would potentially distract you. This company was not a commercial success, but the product had a niche following. It was installed by 68,000 people. And now the code is open source and has been relaunched as Focus Launcher. You can download and try that from focuslauncher.io. Another startup is called ReadUp. ReadUp is a browser extension and app helping people to read in depth without distraction. It tracks the reading activity of the user from their scrolling to ensure that people read the full article instead of skip some paragraphs. So only those who read the article in full may comment. This leads to higher quality discussion. These are just two examples of humane tech startups and products. Many others are being developed right now. Now, as we come to the end of the talk, I want to introduce a great starting place if you'd like to learn more. The Social Dilemma was released on Netflix in 2020. This documentary demonstrates how individuals and society are impacted by social media platforms' algorithms. It's part drama, part documentary. It features interviews with the co-founders of the Center for Humane Tech, big tech insiders, authors, and academics. And remarkably, it's been watched by more than 100 million people. So my hope is that it may inspire a generation of humane technologists who will build their own new solutions, or they will work at the big tech firms and lead to gradual change from the inside. Thank you very much for listening to my talk today. If you have questions or feedback, feel free to email me, justin@mindful.technology. You can also read my website if you'd like to learn more about humane tech, digital well-being habits, digital mindfulness, and other topics. It's mindful.technology. Thank you very much.